My next guest is Roni Habib. He is the author of Happy and Resilient, The Complete Guide to Joyful Teaching, Learning, and Living. He is an expert in helping leaders, educators, and parents become happier, more resilient, more connected to their purpose, and more playful. He is also the founder of EQ Schools, and he also leads workshops and speaks in organizations nationally and abroad. Well, welcome to the podcast, Ronnie.
Dana, thanks so much for having me. It's such a pleasure to be here today with you and with all your listeners.
Tell me about a time when you were in the trenches and managed to crawl out.
Yes, so I taught for many years before launching EQ schools, and I started out in Boston,
Mm-hmm.
in Fenway High School. You could actually see Fenway Park from my classroom. You could see the scoreboard of Fenway Park. And that was a pretty intense year for sure, as my first year teaching. But I was still like super energized and excited about teaching and, just really into it. And I taught at Lexington High School the next year. And then I moved to California and I taught in Palo Alto for many, many years, probably, I'd say, close to 15 or something, or maybe
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember exactly, but it's generally the amount. And around my 6th year of teaching, I honestly almost quit because I was exhausted. I didn't even realize that I was burning out, but I was burning out. I was putting so
Mm-hmm.
much, energy in, and just felt like, there's a lot of pressure on us, and there's a lot of kind of, I felt like some negativity, going on at the school too. Um, and it impacted the students. And I remember I was actually asking myself, like, what am I gonna, what am I gonna do next? Am I gonna go into
Mm-hmm.
finance? Am I like, what am I gonna do? And that year, I had a very intense wake up call. So on April, that year, I remember, I don't remember exact date, but I remember the month was April, and I get to school and I park my car and I get out of my car and I walk towards my classroom. And
Mm-hmm.
before I get to my classroom, the intercom goes off telling us we have an emergency staff meeting. So I go to the choir room and I sit and I wait to hear what's going on. And in comes our principal and she looks at us, Dana, and completely distraught, and then she tells us all that one of our students committed suicide. And it's a very big school, there were 2,000 kids there. But
Mm-hmm.
when she said the name, it was my student.
Mm-hmm.
And Dana, like that moment broke me. It
Mm-hmm.
was I honestly hard to move kind of thing, you
Mm-hmm.
know. And but he did in a very public way. He did it with the train that morning. And you know how rumors spread. We wanted to get the truth basically out to our students and support them. And that's what we all did. We all just
Yeah.
basically broke the news down to kids. And the whole day, all of us just supported kids. And that week, I got an email from his mom. I think it was a day or maybe 2 days later. And she said, Mr. Habib, you had a real connection with my son. He loved your class. He loved this camp you took students on. And I really want you to speak in his funeral. And so, of course, I said yes. It was the hardest thing I've ever had to do professionally.
Mm-hmm.
But I go to the church that Saturday and I'm asked to sit in the first row. And then I see the mom speak about her child, and I just had my kids were really young at the time, and I started to cry when I saw her speak, and then I saw the dad get up and speak about his child, and I lost my shit, about.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, by the
Mm-hmm.
way, I'm sorry if I don't know if I'm okay. But I it was, and then it's my after his speech, it was my turn to
Sure.
go up and speak, and so I get up on stage and I shared what I shared. But at the end of my speech, I don't know if this ever happened to you, and this will definitely sound a little bit like, I'm from Santa Cruz, so this will
Mm-hmm.
sound a little Santa Cruzy tree huggy hippie. But I literally had this voice channel through me that told me if I'm going to continue to be an educator, there was nothing that was going to stop me from putting my students' well-being first. Like
Yeah.
nothing. No matter what, no matter what I taught, I was like, I'm going to teach them how to be well.
Yeah.
And I taught, AP economics and history and all that at the time. I was like, no, I'm going to teach them how to be well first. So this thing
Mm-hmm.
doesn't happen again. But, Dana, I was not well.
Mm-hmm.
And you know how kids can smell bullshit from a mile away? And so,
Mm-hmm.
like,
Mm-hmm.
I needed to do my own work. I started to see a therapist. I started using mindfulness practices in earnest in my life. I started using positive psychology practices. And honestly, in the span of about 3 to 4 months, my life transformed. I had more energy. I was more connected to my purpose. I was more excited to go to work. I was more creative. I mean, my students thought I was on drugs. Like it was that type of level, of transformation. And
Yeah.
I was like, okay, so if I have these skills as an adult, why are we not giving it to kids? And I created this course called Positive Psychology, and I was praying that 25 students would sign up because it's an elective, like you
Yeah.
got to get the numbers. 107 signed up.
Wow.
It blew me away. I was like, okay, clearly it's not about me. Like kids just, they want to know if you well.
Yeah.
And I taught this course for 4 years and saw hundreds of kids behaviorally shift in front of my eyes. And it just gave me a renewed purpose for teaching and like really uh, remembering why I'm doing this in the first place.
Yeah.
And but then I also realized that the amount of impact that I can have, the impact I have is beautiful. It's powerful. It's what I wanted,
Hmm.
and I also wanted it to be even larger. I wanted ideally millions of kids and millions of educators, frankly, to use some of these strategies that I was using for myself and using in my classroom. And
Hmm.
a lot, because a lot of these strategies I ended up using in my other classes, and they weren't very complicated things, like
Hmm.
improv games, connection rituals, gratitude practices, things to basically remind us of, like, hey, we have a choice about how we live our life. We have a choice about what we're gonna, the thoughts that we have in our brain, and we can actually, like, really, with the support of others and with ourselves as a resource, we can truly thrive and live the life we want to live. And
Hmm.
so I decided, I'm going to train other educators on how to do some of these
Hmm.
work in their classrooms. And I've had a lot of experience also leading professional development in educational technology before. And so I kind of married the two together, and I launched EQ Schools, and that was about a decade ago. And EQ
Hmm.
Schools was started as a project. Really, it was just like, hey, I'm doing this on the side, like I'm teaching full time, but I'm doing this on the side, and we'll see where it goes. And I mean, it basically just mushroomed, right? Like from there, it
Hmm.
just like grew and grew and grew, and I led more and more workshops and conferences, and I spoke in a lot of conferences too. And when educators saw me there, or leaders, administrators saw me there, they then decided, hey, can we bring this guy in to do our professional development,
Hmm.
PD day or keynote, or, multiple PD days with us. And yeah, and that's what led to EQ Schools being what it is today.
Hmm. Hmm. And how much longer were you in the classroom after you'd launched EQ Schools
Yeah,
and
that's a great question. Definitely took, I'd say, but uh, probably another 4 years I was in
okay.
the classroom, and I was initially full time, and then slowly, like, like went part time, and then eventually like very little, and then eventually I couldn't do both. It was just
Yeah.
it. So I really just focused on EQ Schools, and focused on essentially, like teaching the teachers, right? Like really supporting um, districts all over I mean, the schools all over the world,
Hmm.
and educators all over the world in really thriving themselves, and then in very practical tools to help their kids thrive.
Hmm. Hmm. So, kind of given the timeline, this was well before the pandemic, and I
Yes.
imagine a lot of interest probably during the pandemic and shortly thereafter. What does it look like now in terms of districts wanting to bring you in and focusing on educator resiliency? Has that waned a bit in the past few years?
No, it's
Okay.
it's uh it's as strong as ever. I mean,
Okay.
it's yeah, ever educate. I mean, I honestly, I feel like probably. I mean, I know the pandemic was so nuts and crazy, and of
Mm-hmm.
course, there's a crazy amount of demand for my work and services and all of that. But I feel like even now during this time, I feel like we're still kind of like a bit
Mm-hmm.
in post-pandemic kind of era,
Mm-hmm.
and there's still a lot of need absolutely for it. And the truth is, I think there's always going to be, because as educators, we're givers.
Yeah.
That's what we do, and which is okay. But in the same time, burnout is real,
Mm-hmm.
and not only educators, but administrators feel it too. And they want their staff to be well, and they want their staff to be happy and resilient and connected and joyful together. Um, and so, yeah, this work's I'm sure, gonna continue to, yeah, there's a lot of need, let's just
Mm-hmm.
say,
Yeah.
out there
Yeah.
for sure. Yeah.
So I mentioned in the bio that you wrote the book Happy and Resilient, The Complete Guide to Joyful Teaching, Learning, and Living. So what are some of the practical things people can learn by picking up a copy of your book?
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up. Well, one of the things that I want to mention is that when you focus on happiness and resilience, it's it's not we're not just doing it to thrive and to feel good. It actually
Yeah.
ends up really supporting our peak performance. Educators are a lot better at their jobs when they're well. Not The research shows it's not by a little bit, it's by a lot. The same is true with
Hmm.
administrators, and by the way, parents as well. And so I wrote the book because I wanted, I mean, first of all, I want people to thrive, and I want them to be well and to live the life they've always wanted with full passion and everything. And also, I want students to have the most impactful and effective educators out there,
Hmm.
and I
Hmm.
want students to thrive. And so, in my book, basically, I outline an acronym that I call RAMP, and it's basically a ramp that helps us get to the next kind of level of well-being and resilience. And RAMP stands for the five elements that contribute to our well-being and resilience. And it's
Hmm.
authentic, right? Authentic well-being. It's not like toxic positivity. It's like really what leads a person to truly thrive.
Hmm.
And so R stands for relationships. Relationships are the number one predictor of well-being. Relationships are also an incredibly important predictor of success in the classroom for
Hmm.
students. And RAMP has two A's in it. So the first A is awareness.
Hmm.
Awareness is about being present, being here, because life is lived in the present moment. Uh, Most of the time, I mean, I'll ask you, Dana, and I'll ask your listeners right now as you're listening to this. If you're honest with yourself, how much time do you spend in the past or in the future in your head? Right? Most of us are there most of the time, when
Hmm.
life is really lived in the present. And
Hmm.
our people know, like your students know, your kids know whether you're here or not, like if you are present or not with them. And so, um, awareness is the first A. And it's really, we get there by practicing, literally practicing being more mindful on a daily basis. And you can have a meditation practice if you want, but you can also simply, set intentions in your life to be more present and more aware and just notice more.
Hmm.
And the more you do that, the more here you are, the more present you are. The next A in RAMP is advancement. It's about pursuing
Hmm.
lifelong goals, with a certain level of tenacity. Like, and if we're afraid of our goals, we're afraid of afraid of taking the next step, the risky step to do them, doing it anyways, and having the
Hmm.
courage to actually like pursue that. You know, M stands for meaning, so really being
Hmm.
connected to our purpose. Why are we here? Like,
Hmm.
why do we do what we do? And I think most of your listeners will say, well, I do what I do for the kids, which is beautiful. And that's a beautiful answer. I hope that's the answer. But underneath that answer, there is a very private story that each one of us has. And there are different stories for each and every one of us. And it's important to connect to those stories,
Hmm.
and because those stories are what light our fire up to continue the work. So if I were to ask your listeners, like, what's your story? Like,
Hmm.
reconnect to it and really
Hmm.
notice and remember it. And then P stands for positive emotions. So ideally, we should experience a 3-to-1 ratio of positive emotions to difficult emotions in life
Hmm.
in order to thrive. If it's 4-to-1 or 5-to-1, even better, but most people need at least a 3 to 1. Most Americans are not there. And
Hmm.
the thing is, a lot of times when I say that, people are like, well, Ryan, that's just common sense. You know, you feel
Yeah.
more positive emotions, you'll feel good. But the thing is, if you notice how common sense isn't very common, like, in other words, how many of us put in like practices to really support this ratio and
Hmm.
to have it grow? And notice another thing about the ratio is that it's 3 to 1, it's not 3 to 0, meaning that we
Hmm.
absolutely experience difficult emotions in life and we shouldn't just run away from them or um, deny them, or because whatever you resist persists. It just becomes bigger in you, takes more
Yeah.
space in you, and it comes out in a maladaptive behavior later. The more you name something, you begin to tame it. You actually become an
Hmm.
observer of it. For example, I'm afraid. If you say that, you're no longer inside of the fear. The fear doesn't have a clutch on you. You're all
Hmm.
of a sudden you're an observer of it.
Hmm.
And slowly through a lot of the practices that I teach, you can begin to actually gain wisdom from it and get to a place of more a more kind of relaxed, connected space with yourself, and a more resilient place, more grounded place,
Hmm.
where you actually still take the step necessary in order to move through the fear. Now, I just want to go back to one thing in terms of the relationship piece with Ramp, and that
Hmm.
is to simply say that I encourage your listeners to think for a moment, who in your life, forget about work for a moment, like who in your life do you love or care
Hmm.
about? But, like life gets busy, you know what I'm saying? And like sometimes these relationships suffer because of how busy we are. Who in your life take, can you give the gift of time this week to? Like
Hmm.
spend even just 30 minutes or
Hmm.
more with them,
Hmm.
right? And be like, hey, I just want to check in. Like, how are things for real? Like, how are you actually, like, what's up? Like, how are
Hmm.
you really doing? And let me share how I'm really doing. And when we do that, it's pretty amazing what happens, because people, you see, what people want the most in life after they have food and they have shelter is they want to be seen.
Hmm.
And so,
Hmm.
And so when we actually give that gift to someone and truly sit with them and let them feel seen and heard and understood, amazing things happen, not just for them, but for us, because
Hmm.
it feels so good to be able to give that to someone. And then, of course, to open yourself up to them. So that's like the kind of like big scale approach for the book, right? Like the if you will, the skeleton of it, right? And within
Hmm.
each one of those categories, I really delve deep into specific, very practical tools, right? That you
Hmm.
can use in the classroom, but not just in the classroom, also in your life to really thrive and be more resilient. And I'm happy to delve into some of them if you'd like, if we have time.
Yeah, so you told me in the pre-chat you do have some activities that listeners could use in the classroom. Maybe if you'd like to take one or two of those words from the acronym and give some examples.
Yeah, for sure. So I'll give you an example, like for relationships, okay?
Hmm.
One huge thing that you can do in the classroom that's very simple is to start classes with improv games, okay?
Hmm.
So one such improv game, for example, is to get all the students up in a circle, standing circle.
Hmm.
And it's called, I mean, the name of the game is a very unfortunate name. It's called Pass the Clap.
Okay.
But I promise it's a safe game. So what you do is you start by clapping, and then the person next to you claps, and the person next
Hmm.
to them claps. Until the clap goes all the way around the circle.
Hmm.
Okay. So you do it once, and then you tell the kids or the students, you tell them, hey, we're going to do it again. It's just this time I'm not gonna clap. I'm gonna say ready, set, go. The person next to me is gonna clap, and the clap's gonna go around the circle in less than 10 seconds.
Okay.
Or let's say if you have a small class, in less than 5 seconds, or if you have a bigger class, maybe in less of 12 seconds, something like that, right? And you tell the students that we're going to try this, but if we fail, okay,
Hmm.
meaning let's say we said 10 seconds, but we did it in 11 seconds, so we failed. Well, we're going to celebrate our failure like crazy. And if we fail, we're all going to go, woohoo, okay? And we're going to like have jazz
Yeah.
hands, and
Uh-huh.
we're going to like, really like be loud and just celebrate our failure, okay?
Hmm.
Because
Hmm.
the truth is that when you celebrate your failures, not only does it allow you to take more risks when you learn moving forward, but it also makes it so that you actually learn from your mistakes faster.
Yeah.
Okay. And so you do that, right? You pass the clap, you're ready, set, go. The clap is passed around the circle. And then if you're successful, awesome, because people are going to go woohoo anyways, because they're successful. Okay. If you're not successful, you just go woohoo. And then what you do is you try it one more time. Okay.
Okay.
Now, even if you were successful, what you're going to do is you basically are going to say, okay, now that we did it in 10 seconds, let's do it in 7 seconds, or
Mm-hmm.
let's do it in
Mm-hmm.
6 seconds. And you really give them a real challenge. And what's beautiful about that is that, yeah, eventually they'll fail, but they're going to go woohoo, and they're going to have fun together. And it turns out that a game like this, and by the way, all the games that I wrote about in my book and that I show in my workshops and stuff, yes, they're games, but really, if you think about it, they are primarily pedagogical tools, because what they
Mm-hmm.
do is they prime our students' brains to be more ready to learn
Mm-hmm.
and to grow together. In other words, games put us in a very mindful state. Like, because our students come to us from different places, right? Like, one student didn't have breakfast, one student just saw their parents fight, in the morning, another student, whatever. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, they come from different places. And when you play a game like that with them, which by the way takes about like a minute max, all right,
Mm-hmm.
then you get them to be here and be here. It's a very
Yeah.
mindful state that they're in. Plus, in a game like that, everyone becomes a team right away. Like, you create a
Mm-hmm.
team feeling, okay? And people are laughing, and they're smiling. And it turns out that, like, what that creates is the sense of emotional resonance in the
Mm-hmm.
room.
Mm-hmm.
And emotional resonance is when we're limbically connected in a positive way with one another.
Mm-hmm.
And limbically meaning like the emotional processing reason, like the emotional reasoning part of the brain is positively connected with other people. And when people experience emotional resonance with one another, they feel like they belong. And when a
Mm-hmm.
person feels like they belong, they can really learn a lot more. Um, the other piece about a game like this is that those positive emotions that are elicited actually make us more creative, more collaborative, and we want to learn more things. This is the researcher Barbara Fredrickson at the University of North Carolina.
Mm-hmm.
And so my point is, in this book, and also, and with the workshops that I run, the idea here is to say, yes,
Mm-hmm.
let's create a climate in the classroom or at the school that is emotionally intelligent, psychologically
Mm-hmm.
safe, joyful, and fun. But understand, it's all rooted in research that at the end of the day ends up with bottom line results for us, which is learning. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And getting great academic achievement and stuff, and intellectual achievement. So, but without foregoing the most important part, which is the health and the heart of the students, and of ourselves as
Mm-hmm.
educators.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Um, yeah. And another example, I'll give you. You asked for two, so I'll give you another quick one.
Okay.
Um, one of the things that I love to do is have gratitude circles with
Okay.
students. And so students come in before the bell even rings. They come in, they take out a journal, and they write three things they feel grateful for in their journal.
Mm-hmm.
So what that does is, again, it changes their mindset right away to what is going on well in their life. And then we stand up and we form a circle, and each person shares about one thing or one person they're grateful for. And if we have time, they share why. And the
Mm-hmm.
beautiful thing about that is that it not only strengthens relationships, because the sharing of the gratitude actually opens the windows into people's lives. People all of a
Mm-hmm.
sudden like, whoa, this person is grateful for their grandma. They live with their grandma. Or this person is grateful that they have food in the fridge this morning. Wow, I had no idea they deal with food insecurities. You know what I mean? Or
Mm-hmm.
does that make sense? It's like builds up empathy, right? All of a sudden.
Yeah.
But also, being grateful is one of the fastest physiological shifter that we can experience. You can't be
Mm-hmm.
grateful and be hateful at the same time. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Um, it's a very powerful very mindful exercise to engage students in. It's not a mindfulness practice, but it's, in other words, it's not about, training our attention, but it does have a presence component to it because you are shifting physiologically and in your mind to a better state and a more present state
Hmm.
for
Hmm.
yourself and with others. Now, there's a lot of other, practice. Obviously, the book contains like hundreds of these things, you know what I mean, and lots of games, lots of mindfulness practices, and all of that. Um, and yeah, all practical and pretty like fun things that students are really into. I
Hmm.
can, if you're interested, I can share about. I'll tell you, be, so I was actually really afraid of using these things in my
Hmm.
classroom before
Hmm.
I started using them. So I was afraid of a few things. The first is I was worried that students would think it's lame to have like
Hmm.
mindfulness exercises and improv games and gratitude circles. I was like, they may think it's lame.
Hmm.
The second thing I was worried about is that and this is honest to God, I was worried that parents will sue me because they think I'm initiating their kids into a cult, especially with the
Hmm.
mindfulness practices. And then the last thing I was worried about was losing instructional minutes.
Yeah.
Like I was teaching AP economics at the time, micro and macros, a lot of info. And I was like, do I have time for this? And
Yeah.
here's what ended up happening. So, number one, I would say about 95% of students love these exercises. Not all of
Hmm.
them, but the vast majority of them. And those who don't, I just ask them, hey, can you kindly just respect the others and hold space for us, you know, in a respectful way. So you could, journal while we do it. You can just, sit back, relax, and notice what's going on. You know what I'm saying? But the vast majority of students love it. The second thing is, and by the way, they love it because it's the only time during their crazy day that they have a moment to connect with their body, a moment to
Hmm.
connect with what they're grateful for, a moment to connect with and noticing like where their thoughts are,
Hmm.
and to connect with others in a joyful way. And it's so powerful for them. Um, the second thing that ended up happening as I started using these things is that I started getting nice emails from
Hmm.
parents. I got this email once from a mom. I saved it because she said, she's like, Mr. Habib, I don't know what you're doing in your class, but keep doing it. My son came home today and told me I needed to self-regulate. So I thought that was cool. And then lastly, I gained instructional minutes. Like yes, I
Yeah.
had less amount of minutes, but the students were really there. They were present,
Yeah.
fully ready to go. They're more focused.
Hmm.
And so we're able to cover more with less time in a more effective way.
Sure.
And lastly, I'll say honestly, like these things ended up giving me the like they helped me reconnect with the joy of the work. And so I didn't
Hmm.
feel like I was in a trench anymore. I felt like I
Hmm.
was just like loving life, like in the classroom, and in my school. And
Hmm.
so, yeah, I just, yeah, those are some of the things that came up.
Well, thanks so much for sharing those ideas. And, to find out more, listeners can pick up a copy of your book. And, these themes, practical tools. And like you said, they're not going to, in the long run, lose out on instructional time because students are more regulated. And, to
Um,
start the class that way where students are able to connect and really center themselves, right? Um,
yep.
whether it be first thing in the morning or you have them last period of the day, I think, um, you know, giving them that opportunity, if that's not given in any other class, is really
Yep.
important.
Absolutely. And also, what I found when I go into schools and districts, sometimes teachers ask me, well, Ronnie, you taught us all these activities and
Yeah,
games and strategies, but what if we all use them? Like, aren't students going to find it repetitive or like, And the answer is no.
yeah,
To students, like, honestly, like schools where multiple classrooms do it, the students love it. And
Yeah.
it just works. It works.
Yeah.
Elementary, middle, high school, colleges, it works. And that's what I really want your listeners to get, that like the coolest thing about the journey for me is not at all what I provide, is to see what like the participants in the workshops and the people who read the book,
Hmm.
that they then take the stuff into their classrooms and make magic with it, even beyond what I could imagine. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Like and so that's the most beautiful part of the whole thing, is that people's, their creativity is just like infused with these ideas that I provide them, but they take it to the next level with their students, and it's so beautiful to see.
Hmm. And so you talked about some of these topics that you provide workshops on. So the applied positive psychology, the self-regulation. Um, we haven't talked, but you said you also do empowering beliefs for yourself in the workshops.
Yes.
And how do you present? Is it kind of sit and get? You have a lot, do you have a lot of practical tools that teachers
Yeah.
do within the workshop?
Yeah, so my workshops are never just sit and get. They're
Hmm.
very, very interactive and very active and very practical. Like, so for example, with the workshop around with the subject of really focusing on our empowering beliefs.
Hmm.
In the beginning, I present the research around how our brain works and all of that, but then we delve deeply into understanding, for example, how cognitive distortions work in our body and in our
Hmm.
mind, and where they come from. So like where the understanding of the concept of the inner critic, right? Like in
Hmm.
our mind. And I call it sometimes the gremlin, sometimes I call it the itty bitty shitty committee, that
Hmm.
voice that
Hmm.
keeps telling you that you are never enough or whatever.
Hmm.
And I actually, I have the teachers delve into, okay, like what are some of those messages that you may be getting, and
Hmm.
or maybe even buying into a little bit. And so many educators now do, struggle with some of this. Like, I'm not an effective enough educator. I'm not working as hard as my colleagues. No one's going to listen to me. I feel like I'm a fraud. Or if everything is great at work, they're like, but I'm a horrible parent because I don't spend
Hmm.
enough time with my kids. You know what I mean? And it's
Yeah.
like, well, you could, like that inner critic can kind of be a slave driver a little
Yeah.
bit within you, because then you're like, well, okay, so I'm going to be a better parent. So you spend a lot more time, with your kids, and maybe you wake up a little bit earlier to be with them and all that. And then, but then, the inner critic comes back and they're like, well, you should really look at all your colleagues. They work so much harder than you. So
Hmm.
then you're like, all right,
Hmm.
I'm going to go work really hard. But then he comes back, well, you're not a good enough parent. Like, it's not a game you can win. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah.
And so, like, really, like teaching educators, like, hey, with mindfulness, we can be aware of what choices we choose to believe, like what belief we choose to believe, whether it's
Hmm.
unconscious or conscious. It's like still, in a way, it's still what ends up happening for us. And but with more awareness and consciousness, we're able to
Hmm.
say, hey, I'm going to choose beliefs that are empowering, not only so I can feel better,
Hmm.
but also so that I can be at my best. Because when I feel better and when I'm really compassionate with myself and loving towards myself, and I'm essentially my best coach for myself,
Sure.
I get the best results. And
Hmm.
I'm fully there, for my students, and they get the best results. And so, um, so yeah, the work. I mean, look, the workshops, and so in my workshops, a lot of times, people. I mean, there's a lot of joy, like because we kind of, like I said, we play a lot of games. We
Hmm.
connect with one another on what we feel grateful for, and like a whole bunch of different prompts and things like that. And it feels really good. And they're also prompts that elicit vulnerability, right?
Hmm.
And like
Hmm.
the ones we just
Hmm.
talked about. And so sometimes people cry, and sometimes people really open up, and it's actually very beautiful, because that place
Hmm.
of vulnerability is all of a sudden a place of growth, not only for the
Hmm.
individual but for the whole group. Everyone's like, whoa, this person's real. Like they're truly they're willing to go there and actually share what's up with them,
Hmm. Hmm.
and it's so amazing and powerful, that we can be human beings together instead of just human doings.
Hmm.
And those moments really are if you think about it, those are the moments that where people really feel connected to one another and they see each other's humanity.
Hmm. Hmm.
Like a month after that moment, when they disagree about something work related, it's easier to agree to disagree and still work together because you remember,
Hmm.
oh, this person is human underneath. Like I don't need to vilify them or anything like that. You know,
Hmm.
does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah. And I think one of the things you pointed out in the pre-chat was, we focus a lot on SEL programs for our students, but you said you
Right.
can't have an effective SEL program without this adult SEL.
That's right. It's not possible. It fails every time.
Hmm.
And if you are familiar with Castle,
Hmm.
there's there's a whole organization basically that researches like SEL programs in schools, and they are very clear. They're like the number that's one of the prerequisites. It's like, okay, if you're going to launch an SEL program in your school, you have to start with the adults.
Yeah.
And
Hmm.
because the truth is that if it's not modeled, in other words, I can't tell you how many times I saw really well-meaning teachers yell at kids to be mindful.
Hmm.
Okay, that
Hmm.
doesn't work. Do you know what I mean? Like that's not a thing. Like that just like leads the kid to see that it's not real. And so kids need to see it modeled. And
Yeah.
that's they learn way more from that than from the worksheets that we give them. You know.
Yeah, 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 and it goes a long way if you have the teachers in the right space and they're able to then work on these strategies that you mentioned
Yeah.
and within their classrooms, then the instructional time will increase and kids will
Yeah.
be able to acquire knowledge from the lesson and get their needs met. But it can't come from a place of dysregulation of the adults.
Right.
Because,
Exactly.
I think that's how some schools are doing it, and it doesn't work that way, like you said.
Yeah. And in my book, I really delve into, okay, what are like practices that the adults can have for themselves? Do you know
Yeah.
what I mean? Like, because again, it's not when they are willing to do these practices for themselves, they end up feeling better. It's just like they end
Mhm.
up enjoying being at work more.
Yeah.
And yeah, it helps the kids, but it helps them. It's like it the work is too hard to feel burnt out for 30 years. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like you can't do it. It's not fair to yourself. It's not fair to the students. It's meant to be joyful and it's meant to be rejuvenate. Like it's meant to give you, not just to
Hmm.
take from you. Do you know what I mean?
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
Yeah.
Well, we talked a lot about the workshops that you give. Do you also speak at conferences or
Yeah.
will you be maybe putting on a conference at some point? Talk to me a little bit about that.
Yeah, that's a great question. So we have put conferences and summits in the past
Hmm.
together through EQ Schools, our EQ School Leadership Summit and our EQ Schools Conference. And we may do that as well. We may have a leadership summit coming up in June.
Uh-huh.
Um, and that's open to administrators, but it's also open to really any educators who consider themselves leaders, which frankly, I think we can all be.
Yeah.
And I, you know, I, so I think that that's essentially what's down the pike for us. I will say I speak in a lot of conferences and keynote a lot of conferences. So
Hmm.
like, your listeners maybe see me in some of those for sure, and through there, like the people can reach out to me and have me come and speak in their districts or support, like not just speak and keynote, but actually do like professional development work with them ongoing throughout the year, which
Hmm.
is what my preference actually, because then you can really delve into the work more deeply and see actual like not only behavioral change in the adults, but also like the climate begins to shift over
Hmm.
time.
Hmm. And when you go to those districts and provide PD, it's not a one-stop shop. You follow up.
Right.
Yeah.
That's right. That's what I'm saying. So ideally, it's not a one and done. Do you know what I mean? Where
Hmm.
it's ideally it's like multiple points of
Hmm.
contact throughout the year.
Hmm.
Some districts just want a keynote. That's fine. I mean, I'm happy to I do that as well. But it's just that the out like the outcomes are different, right? It's
Yeah.
like And that's okay as long as people understand that, you know.
Hmm. Well, we've had a great
Um,
conversation about your trench
yeah.
story and how you really put together EQ schools while you were still in the classroom, and now
Yeah.
some of the strategies educators can gain through your book. Out of everything we've talked about, what's one thing you'd like listeners to remember?
Well, I my biggest thing that I want them to remember is to remember to be your own best coach. Remember to treat yourself really well. And that goes along like many different aspects, like treating yourself well mentally, and psychologically, but also physically, taking care of your body, taking care of your rest, making sure you have that, and treating yourself well. Because I really, I mean, if you're not going to be there for yourself, who's going to be there for you? And if not now, then when? This is
Yeah.
a quote, that Rabbi Hillel used to say. In Hebrew, it's "Im enan ili mili v'im lo achshav az matai," which basically means exactly that. It's like you need to show up for yourself. This is important,
Hmm. Hmm.
uh, and um, and that I will say that when you do that well, you
Hmm.
you really will show up more powerfully for your students, because students are magnetized to people who are on fire about life.
Yeah.
They're magnetized to people who are well and excited about life.
Hmm.
So that's the biggest thing I want your listeners
Yeah.
to remember. Yeah.
Where can people connect with you and find you online?
So you can go to eqschools.com,
Hmm.
and you can click on contact us, or you can, or I think it's, schedule a call
Hmm.
to just get on my calendar. And I would love to chat with you about potentially supporting your district or your school with professional development. Um, that button, either it's book a call, or I forgot exactly what it is, but it's this big green button, and it will just get you to my Calendly link, and you can click there. You can also email me, Ronnie at eqschools.com.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
RONI at eqschools, plural.com.
Hmm.
I'm on X, and like all the different social media feeds. I'm gonna get to Bluesky soon,
Hmm.
and all
Hmm.
the different places. But Instagram also. On Instagram, I think it's Ronan Habib. Uh, on X, it's also either Roni Habib or Ronan Habib. And also, we're on Facebook. So you can search my name, and you can also search EQ Schools on Facebook.
Hmm.
Um,
Hmm.
and also get the book, Happy and Resilient. Get it on
Hmm.
Amazon, Barnes and Nobles. And I think you'll get a lot from it.
Hmm. Hmm. Well, it's been a pleasure having you on the Out of the Trenches podcast, learning more about your work. And, as listeners hear this episode, we'll hopefully want to bring you in to develop more resilient educators in their
Mm.
school so they can best serve their students. Thank you so much.
Mm. Dana, thank you so much. It was such a pleasure to be here with you. Thanks for the work you do.